My aunt, she's always been a bit different. Not in a bad way, just quirky. She collects antique teacups, talks to her plants, and believes that every stray cat in the neighborhood is a reincarnated philosopher. So when she came to visit last month, I was prepared for anything. Or so I thought. She arrived on a Tuesday, her old station wagon rattling up my driveway, packed to the gills with luggage and what looked like an entire garden's worth of potted herbs. After the usual hugs and "you look so well" pleasantries, she settled into the guest room. I figured we'd spend the week catching up, maybe visiting a museum or two. But on the second day, she made a strange request. We were in the kitchen, I was making coffee, and she was peering out the window at my backyard. "Honey," she started, her voice a little hesitant, "I need you to do something for me." "It's very important." I turned around, expecting her to ask me to help repot a finicky orchid or drive her to a specialty yarn store. I was wrong. "I need you to dig a hole," she said, her eyes serious. "A big one." "Right there." She pointed to a spot near the old oak tree at the edge of my property. I must have stared at her, coffee pot in hand, for a solid 10 seconds. "A hole? Aunt Carol, what are you talking about? Are you trying to bury treasure?" I laughed, trying to make a joke of it, but she didn't laugh back. "Something like that," she said cryptically. "Just trust me. It needs to be about 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide. Can you do that for me?" The look on her face was so earnest, so pleading that my jokes died in my throat. This wasn't one of her usual eccentricities. This was something else. Against my better judgment, I found myself in the garage, pulling out a shovel I hadn't touched in years. What on earth was I doing? Digging a mysterious hole in my own backyard at the behest of my quirky aunt. As I walked out to the oak tree, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of a very strange story. The ground was harder than I expected, and the first few shovelfuls were tough. Every scrape of the shovel against dirt and rocks echoed the questions in my head. What was this for? What was she planning? I dug for what felt like hours. Sweat dripped down my forehead, my back ached, and my hands started to blister. All the while, Aunt Carol sat on my porch, sipping lemonade and watching me with an unreadable expression. She didn't offer to help, just watched. It was unnerving. Neighbors peeked through their blinds, probably wondering if I'd finally lost my mind. I was starting to wonder the same thing. Finally, after an eternity, the hole was done. It was a proper hole, deep and wide, just as she'd asked. I stood there, leaning on my shovel, covered in dirt and completely baffled. "Okay," I called out to her. "It's done. Now, are you going to tell me what this is all about?" She smiled, a gentle, knowing smile, and walked over to me. She peered into the hole, nodding with satisfaction. "It's perfect," she said softly. Then she turned to her car. I watched as she retrieved a small, beautifully carved wooden box from her trunk. It looked old, ancient even, with intricate patterns etched into the dark wood. She carried it with such care, like it was the most precious thing in the world. My heart started pounding. What was in the box? Was I about to become an unwilling accomplice to something illegal? My mind raced with wild possibilities. She walked to the edge of the hole and knelt down, placing the box carefully at the bottom. She didn't bury it, she just placed it there. Then she stood up, dusted off her hands, and looked at me. "Now," she said, "we wait." "Wait? Wait for what?" I asked, my voice filled with frustration and confusion. "For the rain," she replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. And that's when I really thought she lost it. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The weather forecast had predicted a solid week of sunshine. There wasn't a hint of rain. I told her as much. "Aunt Carol, it's not going to rain. The forecast is clear all week." She just patted my arm. "Oh, it will," she said with absolute certainty. "It always does." For the next 2 days, life was awkward. We went about our routines, but the hole was always there. A big, gaping question mark in my backyard with a mysterious box sitting at the bottom. I'd catch myself staring at it, then at the sky, then back at the hole. And Carol, meanwhile, was completely calm. She read her books, tended to her herbs, and hummed cheerful tunes. It was like she didn't have a care in the world. On the third day, I woke up to a strange sound. A rhythmic tapping against my window, Rain, not just a sprinkle, but a steady soaking downpour. The sky was gray and heavy, exactly as she had predicted. I ran downstairs. Aunt Carol was already on the porch, a wide grin on her face, holding 2 mugs of hot tea. She handed one to me. "I told you," she said, her eyes twinkling. We stood there in silence for a while, watching the rain fall, listening to it drum against the roof. The hole in the backyard was slowly filling with water. The wooden box was now submerged. I finally broke the silence. "Aunt Carol, you have to tell me. What is going on?" She took a slow sip of her tea, her gaze fixed on the rain-filled hole. "That box," she began, "belonged to your great-great-grandmother, my grandmother. Her name was Ilara." She explained that Ilara was a woman who was deeply connected to nature, a woman who believed in old traditions and the earth's quiet magic. The box was a wishing box, but not in the way you might think. It wasn't for personal gain. It was for gratitude. She told me that their family had a tradition. Whenever the land was dry, whenever the gardens were thirsty and the world felt parched, they would perform this ritual. They would dig a hole, a symbolic gesture of asking the earth to open up and receive. They would place the box, filled with handwritten notes of thanks for past rains and hopes for future ones, into the hole. And then they would wait for the sky to answer. The ritual wasn't about commanding the rain, but about showing respect and gratitude, about realigning with the cycles of nature. As I listened, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was a bizarre story, one that sounded like it came from a fairy tale. But looking at the rain, feeling its cool spray on my face, and seeing the absolute faith in my aunt's eyes, I started to understand. It wasn't about magic in the hocus-pocus sense. It was about connection. It was about tradition. It was about remembering that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves. The rain fell all day. When it finally stopped, the world outside looked clean and new. The air smelled of wet earth and fresh leaves. The hole was now a small pond. Aunt Carol said we'd leave it for a day to let the water soak into the ground, a gift back to the earth. The next morning we went out. The water had drained away, leaving the box sitting in the soft mud. We retrieved it, cleaned it, and my aunt placed it back in her car, ready for the next time it was needed. Before she left, she gave me a long hug. "Don't ever forget where you come from," she whispered. "There's more to this world than what you can see." Watching her drive away, I looked back at the partially filled hole in my yard. It wasn't just a patch of disturbed dirt anymore. It was a reminder. A reminder of family, of faith, and of the strange and beautiful mysteries that connect us all. And you know what? My garden has never looked better. Thanks for watching, and if you have a story about a quirky family tradition, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.